In my last video, I gave you the 3 steps on how to go from a beginner to a pro. After getting through that video, you'll be at a place where you can compete in tournaments, but doing well enough to actually make a grand finals or a duo cash cup finals is a whole different story. I practiced and practiced for years and I was never able to make an FNCS grand finals until last season. And in this video, I'm going to tell you the differences on what happened last season compared to every season before it. If you want to see that other video with the 3 steps to go pro, that video's down below, along with all my creative maps, which are really good practice. With that being said, let's hop into this video. The first reason I think we made it so far is because of how we approach the mid-game fights. I know that Piggle's a better fighter than me. He's really good at finding that first damage that gives us an advantage in the fight. And I did this with a lot of my other duos in the past too, but Piggle really knew how to work with it. So what I would do is I'd be pressuring from one side, making sure that they feel the pressure enough to kind of mess them up. Meanwhile, Piggle's going to be on the other side, really pressuring, trying to get that first aggressive damage. I play a bit more passive because I know I'm not quite as good at fighting as Piggle was. But the important thing, because Piggle is making the more risky plays to give us an advantage, I was always ready at a moment's notice to jump to Piggle's side and assist him. A lot of times in our fights, he would end up getting a knock, but he would get knocked too. But I would be right by his side the second things in the fight started to get messy. And this is a really important thing because, a lot of times Piggle would be able to get a knock without getting knocked himself, and then we're just in a 2v1 situation. But basically any time that things did go wrong where Piggle would get knocked in the fight, I'd always be there to clean it up. And that's something a lot of duos don't have. So simply understanding that Piggle is a better fighter than me gave us a lot of an advantage in a fight because I'd always be there to back him up. Obviously, in an opens and a duo cash cup, I'm fully confident. I'm going to be taking fights, getting aggressive myself because we want to clean up those fights as fast as possible. But anytime we were fighting a pro duo or we're in FNCS heats, stuff like that, that's where I took this playstyle where I'm just playing slow, trying to funnel the enemy towards Piggle and then be there to back him up. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's get on to point number 2. In the upper lobbies, when we get to like round 3 FNCS and when we're in heats, it's super important to have a clear Storm Surge plan. And me and Piggle played off our strengths really well. We had a really strong success rate with our fights in mid game, but anytime we played Storm Surge safely and kind of just made a tower and tried to get tags, that didn't go too well for us. So we made plans on like where people are going to be rotating at which points in the game and where we can find sneak attacks and stuff like that. By having this clear Storm Surge plan, it helped us not die to Surge, 5 out of 10 games. In most of our tournaments, we did really well on Storm Surge, and in the past, I always struggled with it. Storm Surge can be something that absolutely kills your duo, so it's important to have a good plan, and you can build a good plan by just scrimming and watching back tournaments. The third thing that helped us make grands was being able to stick together in endgame. This is another skill that comes a lot from scrimming. Experience is everything when it comes to sticking together and having clear comms, but me and Piggle just did really well with it from the get-go. I feel like me and Piggle just always had duo chemistry. I don't know how we had it, but it just fully clicked from the very beginning. I think a lot of it is because the season before I played with Piggle, I was just playing with a bunch of different pro players. And by doing that, I got really good at following my IGL. They would all be IGLing me and we'd have the best chance at making duo finals if I just stuck by their side 24/7. But long story short, if in endgame you're able to stick together as a duo, that is like the most important thing. By the time it gets to like 4th moving zone, half the lobby, maybe even more sometimes, is solos. So if you can be one of the only duos alive at that point, you're gonna have a really good chance at placing consistently. It also helped that me and Piggle are both really good solo players, so we were really good at solo clutching. Specifically Piggle, he had so many solo clutches last season, it was insane. But a part of the way that we were able to get Piggle so many good solo clutches is by making it far into the game as a duo. But again, that's just another thing that comes with scrimming. The more you scrim, the more tournaments you play, the better your duo chemistry is going to be. But if you're not the IGL and you get split from your leader a lot, or if you are the IGL and you're not communicating well enough, that should be one of the main things you focus on. If you're getting split, figure out what is going on. Why are you getting split? That is going to take you so much farther in competitive. if you can fix that issue. Reason number 4 that we were able to make grands is we had a really good duo drop spot. The reason it was good was, it had good loot, but there also weren't very many good players going there. There were no tier 1 pros. There kind of was. We were technically contested in grand finals by Chimp. On the drop map in grand finals, it looked like they were contesting us, but they were landing up in the mountains while we were landing on a whole different side of the split, meaning we basically had our own drop spot in heats and in grands. That is huge, and honestly, we were really lucky. This season, Dukes has actually taken over our split, which sucks, so I gotta find a new drop spot most likely, unless we want to con Dukes, which not really ideal. But yeah, it's also really important to learn how to play your drop spot. Our spot was kind of weird because there's an airplane side and a junkyard side, and it's super far from each other. And if you split that, you're gonna be split for a lot of the early game and prone to sneak attacks. I can't even tell you how many times I got jumped while I was split from Piggle. It's so important to learn the angles you're gonna get jumped from, learning to stay aware while looting, and also learning how to loot fast and how to get to each other fast. By learning all that stuff, it made it so much more possible for us to survive the early game consistently. Yeah, there's so much that goes with early game that is important for making it far. Obviously, just knowing how to fight it, we couldn't have made it far in the opens if we didn't know how to fight our drop. A lot of times we even gave up our drop spot and would just go lurk in the mid game trying to get a kill. We never played overly greedy off spawn, overly aggressive. We really just played for survival, which brings me to our next point, and that is not being overconfident. If you don't think you have the loot, if you don't start a fight with a good beam and don't have an advantage, a lot of times it's better to just disengage. It's so important to just be able to make the end game every single game. Especially with me and Piggle, we were so good at making it far every end game we made it to. So we didn't get overconfident going for kills in the early game. We just made sure to get enough surge and make it to the end game. When it came to grands, a lot of people thought we were going to place last place, which day 2 we didn't do good. That's a whole different story. But the reason people thought we were going to do terrible in grands is because we were on the forecast tower at our drop spot. Anybody that landed our drop spot was going to play for that forecast tower. They're going to fully fight for it. That's a part of their drop. They're going to claim that. Well, me and Piggle just took our loot and left. We were not playing the forecast tower. We got out of there, in fact, before the first zone even closed. The reason is we did not want to be around when that forecast tower pops because Reet and Ritual were playing for that forecast tower every game. Long story short, we were not overconfident. We did not force play that forecast tower. We would have lost that 9 times out of 10. And everybody thought we were stupid enough to contest Reet and Ritual at the forecast tower. Like, no, bro, we're not stupid. We know they're some of the best fighters in the game. So instead, we looted up, got out of there fast, knew how we were supposed to play. We were supposed to get out of there quick and go get Surge early. That way we didn't have to worry about it later in the game when it's super laggy. That was a whole nother thing with Storm Surge. Once it got to like the 5th zone, the game started fully freezing in heats. It was physically impossible to get tags because everyone was frozen on our screens. So we would make plays to get our Storm Surge tags early, which is another key on how we were able to make it farther than a lot of really good players. Those were the key things that I think helped us make it to grands, but there's one other thing that is kind of crazy. And this is going to contradict what I've said before, especially in that previous video on the 3 steps to go pro. Me and Piggle did not scrim a single time that entire season. Now, that doesn't mean that scrims are not important. Me and Piggle have both scrimmed a ton in the past. And because of that, we've already gained a lot of experience from scrims. Even though we weren't scrimming last season, it definitely could have helped us, but it wasn't a full-blown necessity. The main thing was figuring out how we're gonna play and building that team chemistry. There were enough tournaments for us to gain that chemistry we needed to make it to grand finals, clearly. If we scrimmed, we might have been able to do a little bit better, but a part of me thinks that not scrimming did help us out. Specifically, I think it helped me out. In the past, like when I duoed with Trey, when I duoed with Ken Beans, we would scrim every single day. And because I do content, I do map creation, I do all this other stuff, by scrimming at the end of each day, I was just getting burnt out. And by the time tourneys came, I was just stressed, tired, and not fully in it. But last season, when I played with Piggle, every time we went into a tourney, I was fully there, fully refreshed. And I was was just having fun with it rather than stressing. I do think scrimming is an important part to being a pro because you'll learn the meta better than everyone else that doesn't scrim. And if you're new to the game, new to competitive, trying to get from like top 1000 placements to top 100, yes, you should be scrimming, at least a little bit. But the biggest thing I learned from not scrimming last season and doing well is that you gotta make sure you're having fun and not overdoing it. If you scrim so much and are super stressed going into tourneys, it's like if you lose this tourney, like you're gonna be so sad, you know what I mean? You can't get that invested, or at least it didn't work for me. Some people strive on that stress, but for me, I think I played better without that stress. But to sum it all up, scrims are super important, especially if you're newer to competitive than me. I have scrimmed for years. I think I would not be anywhere near the level I'm at now if I hadn't scrimmed. I need to stop rambling. All I'm trying to say is scrims are important, but make sure you're having fun. That's the key point that I'm trying to get across. With that being said, that's the end of this video. I hope you guys learned something new or just found it entertaining. Let me know down in the comments what other videos you want to see. I have a lot more content coming soon, so stay tuned. Don't forget to try out the creative maps down below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.